Hey everyone, welcome back. In the last couple of lessons, we were taking a look at adding constants to our project as well as some custom views. Like you can see here, our buttons have some nice rounded corners now, and our UI is looking pretty dang good. First thing that I want to do is let's go ahead and commit our changes. It's been been a while since we have done that. So I got our terminal window over here. So I'm going to say git status, and what this is going to do is show us all of the changes that we have made since our last commit. And so that shows us that we've made changes to all of these files and that we've added new files for these. So we're going to say git add dot to add all of those changes. Then we're going to say git commit dash m, and we're going to give a commit message. So we're going to say everything that we've been working on. So I'm going to say set up project with 2 targets. We did the UI for login and register, and we did the code for register a new user. Okay, so that's our commit message. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to actually push this branch up to our repo. So if we say git push origin, and actually what did we name this branch? Git branch part 1. Okay, so we're going to say git push origin part 1. And let's put in password. And that should be pushed up to our branch. And if we checked that out, we can go to GitHub, and you can see here that we have a new branch, part 1, less than a minute ago. Very good. So let's go back to terminal. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new branch to continue working. So I'm going to say git checkout -b, and we're going to name this part 2. Okay. So again, this is what we're doing here is we're creating a new branch. That's what the -b means, and we're checking it out at the same time. So you could do git branch and then the name of the branch, and then you could check that branch out. But this is just a shorter one command process of doing both creating a new branch and switching to that new branch. Okay. So you can see here that now we are switched to a new branch called part 2. All right. So let's keep on working. Up to this point, what we have done with Firebase authentication is made it so that we can register a new user. And let's just real quick go through that. We won't go over the password matching code, but when we are creating a new user using Firebase authentication, we just need an email and a password. And then we use the auth.auth singleton here, and this is again the main class for Firebase authentication methods, and we call create user, and we pass into it the email and password. We check for an error, and if there is no error, then we're going to do something. What we're going to do eventually is we are going to dismiss the view controller and go back to the main storyboard. Okay, so right now we're entirely working inside of the login storyboard here. Okay, so we have just these 2 view controllers inside of a navigation controller. And when we are successful here, whether we are finished registering a new user, logging in an existing user, or continuing as a guest, we're going to dismiss this and come back to our main storyboard, which is where we are going to have the rest of the app that you saw in the preview, like the products and categories and the Stripe stuff as well. Okay, so that's why we still have this main storyboard, and why we are bothering to launch the login storyboard from our home view controller right here. All right, so enough of that. What we're going to be doing in this lesson is working on our login view controller. Okay, so if you check out our login view controller.swift file, right now it's pretty much empty. So let's go ahead and fix that. Let's get rid of these comments we don't need. And I'm going to hold Option, and we need to hook up our UI elements. So I'm going to hold Option and click on Login Storyboard. And I'm going to go ahead and close our left and right panes to give us a little bit more room. Let's scroll over here. And we need outlets for pretty much all of these UI elements. Let's start with the email up here at the top. Going to Control, drag, and let go. And this is going to be the email text, email txt, connect. Then we have the password. And, oh, you know what? This is, so if you try doing an outlet and it comes up as a function, the reason for that is most likely, let me just cancel that, because you have forgotten to set the class for this view controller. So I'm going to select this view controller right here, open up our right panel again, and come over to its identity inspector. And sure enough, we don't have a class set for this view controller in our storyboard. And we need to do that. So the class is the login VC. There we go. And so with that fixed, now when I go ahead and drag from our text view, now it should be an outlet as expected. And let's call that email text. And of course, let's delete this right here. And then let's check in our storyboard. If I right click here, make sure that we don't have any yellow warning signs, and it looks like we don't, so that's good. But just to be sure, let's go ahead and open up our right pane again and open up our connections inspector. And here's our outlet, and here we have this editing did end. All right, so that's a remnant of what we just deleted, so I'm going to just X that out. There we go. All right, so now we have our password field. So I'm going to control and drag, and this is pass text, say connect. Then we need one for our activity indicator. So I'm going to control and drag, call this activity indicator, and say connect. We need one for our forgot password button. And I'm going to control and drag below our first method, and that will let it know that this should be an action, as you can see here. So this is forgot pass button clicked. Or we can just say forgot pass clicked. There we go. And connect. And I don't think we need IB outlets for any of these buttons. I think these can all be actions. So now for our login button, I'm going to control and drag, say login clicked, connect. And then our create new user, we actually don't need a IB action for it since we have already set up the segue directly to our register user view controller. And finally, our continue as guest, I'm going to control and drag and say guest clicked and say connect. All right, very good. We now have all of our UI elements hooked up that we are going to need. I'm going to go ahead and open up our right and left tabs and close our assistant editor by clicking right here on the show standard editor. And now that we have all of our IB actions and outlets hooked up, let's talk about what we need to do. All right, so when we have an existing user, so if we check out Safari, check out our authentication, and you can see that we have some authenticated users. So this is from a couple of lessons ago when we were registering new user. We have an existing user. How do we log them in? All right, let's take a look at the Firebase documentation. So I'm going to say Firebase auth email iOS. Okay. And if we click here, we should be taken straight to the Firebase authentication. And guess what? Again, I want you to try and figure out how to log in an existing user, okay? So take a stroll on through this documentation right here, and you'll see that it's actually pretty easy, all right? So see if you can figure that out on your own. Remember, it's super important. I would say even crucial that you understand and become good at reading documentation and being able to figure out things on your own, all right? So give this a shot. Try to figure out how to log in a Firebase user, all right? All right, hope you paused that and hope you gave it a try. But if not, that's okay. Let's go ahead and do it on our own. I'm going to pretend again that I were someone just learning how to do this the first time, but reading through the documentation, okay? This is how I would do it. I would take a look here and I would say, okay, we're going to need Firebase auth. We've already imported the pod though. I'm going to need to import Firebase. We've already done that in the app delegate, but we're probably going to need it in this view controller as well. This has already been done in the app delegate. Create users, we've already done. Sign in a user, here we go. So this looks like what we need, sign in a user. Wow, looks like this is all we need. Very simple, okay? So I could copy this, jump back into Xcode, and right here on login clicked, I could paste that, and we're going to get thrown an error because we don't have, we haven't imported Firebase yet, right? So up at the top here, let's import Firebase, and you can see that the auth turned green, but we got some errors over here because we don't have an email and password field yet. All right, so how do we get those? Well, we have our email text and our pass text UI text fields here. We can go ahead and get the email and password from those, but remember those are optional values, so we're going to need to unwrap them. We're going to use guard, so we're going to say guard let email equal email text dot text, and then we're going to say where, so that comma stands for where. So we're providing a condition on this variable that we just unwrapped. So we're going to say where email dot is not empty, and then we're going to get the password as well. So we're going to say let password equal pass text dot text where password dot is not empty. Else we are going to stop the execution of this function, because if we don't have an email and a password, we can't log them in, of course. All right, so we have our email, we have our password. If we have it, we will continue on here, where again, we have our auth.auth, then we have the .signin method. Okay, and if you read over here, it says signs in using an email address and password. And what will be important here in the next couple of lessons when we talk about error handling is these possible error codes. Okay, so there's a number of things that could go wrong when you are trying to sign in a user. The user could not exist at all. They could have messed up their password. Email could be invalid. You know, there's a bunch of things that could happen, and we're going to account for all of those here in the future. But for now, all we're going to do is do a check for any errors. So we're going to say if let error is equal to error, then we are going to debug print that error and return out of the function. If there was no error, we are going to simply say print login was successful. And then we also want to have our activity indicator working. So after we make sure that we have an email and password, and we're going to continue on to the Firebase signing in, let's say activity indicator dot start animating. And then here, if there's an error, we want to start or stop animating, because we don't want that to keep on going while there's something wrong. And if we were successful, we are going to say activity indicator dot start animating. And of course, since we are inside of a closure, we need to supply self dot activity. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and give that a try. So I'm going to run this. And if you recall from looking at our database over here, we have a test account, johnny@test.com. You can try and creating a new user, or you can use one of the test accounts that you made previously in the register user lesson. All right, so I'm going to say johnny@test.com. Let's open up Xcode so we can see that print statement. And then the password, I always do 123 for tests. Oh, that reminds me, we need to change that into a secure text entry. And then let's go ahead and test this and say login. There's our activity indicator, and login was successful. And we're still spinning, so did I do the wrong? Oh, I said start animating here as well, so this should be stop animating. All right, but we were successful at logging in. If we check out our database, it says here last signed in January 1st. If I refresh this, now it says last signed in on January 14th, which is today. All right, let's go back to Xcode, and let's do just a couple of quick cleanup things. So we saw that we need to change our password text field to be a secure text entry. So selecting our pass text, come over here to our attributes inspector and scroll down here and select secure text entry. and we can set the content type to password. All right, let's run that again and test that out. And sure enough, that looks much better. All right, that is where we are going to finish up this lesson. In this lesson, we hooked up all of our IB outlets to our login view controller, read through some documentation. I hope you gave it a shot to figure out how to log in a user on your own. And now we can log in users as well as register new users. All right, so we're cruising along here, and I'll see you all in the next one.